Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I'm your host, Kiana Canada. Welcome to the Kiana Canada Show. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been away for a while because I have been studying. It's been a lot of work in my university. I've been paying a lot of attention to these assignments that are coming up, which are very interesting and thought provoking. But it's important to state that that is where I've been. And so now I am available to bring a video to you, to record a video. And so we're going to be doing that today. Ladies and gentlemen, today's topic is, are we losing focus? That's today's topic. Are we losing focus? And before we get into today's topic, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember that your likes, your shares, and if you subscribe to this channel, what it does is it pushes videos like this up in the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that these videos are important. But we must be reminded that just because videos like this are not pushed up in the algorithm does not mean that videos like this are not important. As I reflect on that, I have to bring an announcement that I bring in each of my videos, and it has to deal well, it's dealing with transnational repression. Transnational repression is where countries are reaching across their borders to silence the dissent of their citizens or silence the dissent of a foreign national that they dislike their speech. And so oftentimes when we think about nations that are engaging in transnational repression, we're often looking at the global south, speculating on who it could be in the global south, and actually attaching blame to these countries for putting activists, journalists, human rights defenders, and academics through transnational repression. But, ladies and gentlemen, we must be reminded that the modalities of transnational repression are evolving. And so, as the modalities evolve, that means that countries are finding different ways to put citizens and foreign nationals through transnational repression. When we think of transnational repression, we're often thinking about some of the hard tactics. So we're thinking about extraordinary renditions, incommunicado detention, enforced disappearances, unalivement. And these are some of like the very hard tactics that are widely known in the international community. But there are soft tactics that impact citizens, journalists, human rights defenders, etc. And these soft tactics are less known, I would say. It's either they're less known or people are not paying much attention to it, or it's feigned ignorance. So people, they know, but then they are pretending that they don't know. So, and this has to do with surveillance. So when a state abuses its surveillance capacities to engage in a number of surveillance practices. So, for example, um, so we have covert surveillance. And basically, what covert surveillance is essentially where the party that is the person who's being surveilled does not know that they are being surveilled. And it could be, for example, if it's in a house and law enforcement is surveilling um, individuals within a house, maybe one person suspects that they're being surveilled, but most of the residents in the house don't know. So this is like an example of covert surveillance. Then there is intrusive surveillance. And so intrusive surveillance is where there is an actual person that is surveilling a person's, uh, I guess, their residence or their physical activities. And they're doing so in possibly in that person's residence, or they're doing so within a vehicle. So they're sitting on the outside of somebody's residence in a car and they're surveilling a person. That is intrusive surveillance. Then we have directed surveillance. And directed surveillance is a little bit different because it's uh, often seen sometimes as um, different methods of surveilling a person. So how can I explain it? The directed surveillance is oftentimes when there is a device that is being used to surveil a person. So directed surveillance could be, for example, security cameras that are, as you're walking down the street and there's security cameras. That's kind of that would be an example of directed surveillance. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the most disturbing form of surveillance, which is not really talked about, but is something that I've been working on, is voyeuristic surveillance. And this is where intelligence agencies, they don't have a reason for surveilling you, but they're using they're using their surveillance capacities and a pretextual reason to surveil you, but it's more so they're surveilling you because it is an obsession for them. They're surveilling you because they can't. It's more so surveilling you in your everyday activities, in your personal life. It's kind of like voyeuristic. It's kind of like a fetish for them. It's fetishistic where they are watching your every move, and uh it's quite different, ladies and gentlemen. So it's something that I'm working on. But again, there is research to back this up where there are law enforcement agencies that are actually engaging in fetishistic surveillance, which is, of course, voyeuristic surveillance, where it, they could be, it's an intelligence agency. It's a man who is behind the camera at some intelligence agency. And really, ladies and gentlemen, they're not looking for criminal activity. They're not looking for or watching to see if a person is committing a crime. So they're not looking for criminal activity. They're not looking to see if a person is going to commit a crime. They're not paying attention to that. The whole purpose to surveil you is to get some type of gratification out of the surveillance by watching you. And there is research, to reiterate, there is research to back this up. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we need to bring awareness of, because we have men that are in these intelligence agencies who are abusing their intellectual and um, governmental apparatuses to put vulnerable people, women, not only women, but of course, marginalized communities through this intrusive, or excuse me, not necessarily intrusive, but this voyeuristic surveillance. And it's, to reiterate, it's a form of gratification for them. There's something that they get out of it by watching uh, the victim every single day in their private life, just engaging in mundane activities. And it's quite distressing for most victims who aren't, who, I guess, most victims who don't know how to contend with it. It can be quite distressing, but it's something that we should bring awareness to, because oftentimes what will happen is that these intelligence agencies will put in these applications to surveil specific people, specifically women, trans women, vulnerable people, marginalized communities. They'll put in these applications to surveil them on national security grounds or on grounds of uh, alleged criminal activity. But essentially, what they're doing is they're actually surveilling the person and watching their every move, because it's more so an obsession to them. It's a fetish for them to watch a person in their everyday life doing mundane activities. So it's something that we need to bring awareness to. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be talking about this probably later on in the months. But tonight, what I want to talk about is, are we losing focus as Black Americans in this election cycle? So we know that the Democrats lost the election in 2025, and now we have the Republican Party that has taken control of the White House. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply concerned. And so, hopefully, to reiterate, when I was walking here to the university, I did not prepare. So, this is extemporaneous. This is going to be an extemporaneous video. I wish I would have prepared for it. So, hopefully, like, my arguments come together. It's just going to be thought processes. But what I've noticed, ladies and gentlemen, is that I don't think that I'm deeply concerned that Black Americans could be losing focus on our political and civil rights issues. Now, the reason why I say that is because after the Democrats lost the election, that was, in my personal opinion, and I could be wrong, I don't proclaim to be right about everything, especially in the realm of politics. But what I saw was that this was a message to the Democratic Party that Black Americans needed more, right? Black Americans needed to see more. And being only 14% of the population, I guess there is an argument to be made that Black Americans, how can we expect to create our own party, right? We're only 14% of the population. And so, even if we decided to create our own party, would that be efficacious? Because we're going up against the majority. So we're the minority going up against the majority. And because we don't have strength in numbers, then there is an argument that because we're less in numbers, that we won't win an election. And I can see that argument. I can understand it. But ladies and gentlemen, what I'm seeing this election cycle is that there is Black Americans that are so the Black American community is fractured, and our thought processes are all over the place. So we have some people that are saying that are talking about reparations, and then we have some people that are talking about, well, um, you know, we need to study reparations first, and then you have some people that are so consumed in the Palestinian movement. And then you have some people that are very consumed in the democratic movement. So, excuse me, not democratic movement, but just kind of the politics of uh, the Democratic Party. And then you have people who, some of the Black Americans that are more tied to those progressive issues. And it just seems very um, disorganized, to say the least. And I think what we need to understand as Black Americans is that sometimes we need to start taking, sometimes we need to see exactly what is happening across the aisle. Now, what happened with the Republican Party is that, and again, everyone knows my politics. And if you don't know, then you're going to find out. You know that I am a liberal, my politics more progressive. And I um, disagree with conservatives on like 99.9% of the issues that they talk about. But I do love to hear conservatives talk and argue their points, because I think it, if I am to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I think that not all, but there are some conservatives that are the points that they're putting out into the universe or into the ether, they're able to debate without getting angry a lot of the times. And then so if you can hold an argument without getting angry, then your arguments are easier to understand. And for some people, that's easier to um, maybe a- attack those arguments. And some people, maybe it's easier to agree. I don't know. But I do listen to commentary on both sides of the aisle to get a better understanding of who is saying what and why. And that doesn't mean that I dislike people who are conservative, that, I may not agree with their politics and I may disagree with it and I may call it out. But um, I think it's important that we hear these arguments. If we can't shut down speech unless that speech is harmful, right? And so I'm bringing that up to say that there is disorganization now that appears to be prevalent in the Black American community. And ladies and gentlemen, what I thought would happen is that after this election cycle, or after the last election cycle, what I thought would happen is that the Black Americans would say, okay, there is a significant shift in this political movement, and there needs to be some restructuring and coming together to actually create a movement where our voices are going to be heard. But I'm not seeing that, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm seeing is that there is, unfortunately, it's either Black Americans are sidetracked with other movements. And I'm going to get to that in a minute and explain my point on that. Either Black Americans are sidetracked with other movements, they're either um, prolonging discussions on specific civil rights issues. And three, they are adopting a democratic lens to address um, political and civil rights issues. And I think all those three are admirable, but does little to move the needle forward on politics. So let's take, for instance, the first issue. There's a lot of Black Americans that are consumed or attached to the Palestinian movement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in support of Palestine, those are your politics. I can't tell you what to believe, who to support. As you know, I am a person and I am standing in solidarity with the Jewish community. I have my own reasons for that. Those are my own reasons. And so I'm open to having conversations with anybody about that, whether that's someone online in the United States or whether that's somebody here in Belfast that wants to question me about that. I am open to having those discussions about that. And so I think it's important that uh, you be standing in solidarity with who you want to stand in solidarity with. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we must remember that we are actually passengers to this movement. We're not the drivers of this movement or any move excuse me, this specific movement. So, for example, if you are Black American and you are in support of Palestine, you are essentially a passenger of that movement. You're either a passenger of of the movement, or you are someone who is riding in the back seat of that movement. You're not the driver. Same thing with me. I am in support of the Jewish community. That does not mean that I'm in support of war. As you know, my position, I do not stand in solidarity with war. I think it's very harmful. I think that it does not achieve what uh, I think what we set out to achieve. I think that it causes more harm than good. Um, and again, I don't purport to be um, in the situation room or any intelligence room, and I definitely don't have the intelligence. And what I mean by that is I don't have like the information that that these intelligence agencies have when it comes to evaluating whether or not there should be a war. And so there's little that I can speak on that. But what I think is important is that when we are when we are passengers of a movement, our job, I think, is to make sure that that we are supporting the person. So think of it. You're on a long road trip, right? You're on this long road trip, and the person is may get tired, right? And so, in the event that the driver gets tired, do you take over uh, that that drive, right? But essentially, this drive belongs to that particular driver. And with saying that, what I've seen is that Black Americans, not all, but some, have put themselves in the driver's seat of this movement and have forgotten about driving their own movement forward. And so now, like, it almost feels as if there is lost within this road trip. So, for example, to reiterate, let's go back. You're a passenger of this movement. Sometimes you're in the back seat, and somewhere along this trip, you're supposed to get out. You're supposed to be dropped off. You're not supposed to stay on this trip the entire way. Essentially, because this is not your movement. And that's not to say that, ladies and gentlemen, you can't support who you want to support. Again, you have freedom of expression. You can support anybody that you want to support. That this is your life. It's what you want to do. But in saying that, ladies and gentlemen, it's important for us to, as Black Americans, to realize that we are disenfranchised. We are disenfranchised. We are marginalized. Our rights are being eviscerated every single day. And we don't have people standing behind us and protecting us. We don't have people doing that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in Belfast. And I've gone through transnational repression for 4 years, and I hate to make this about myself, right? But it's just to put things into context. I've gone through transnational repression for like almost 4 years, and no one has stood in solidarity with me. No one has actually uh, helped me in my cause, even though this is a huge human rights violation. No one has done that. No one has, followed through to try and make sure that my rights were protected. And so, ladies and gentlemen, like, are we losing focus? Like, I'm turning on the internet, or excuse me, I'm looking on YouTube every single day. And I'm seeing Black Americans who are being victimized in the United States of America. I'm seeing people that are trying to get justice, and uh, people who are missing their family members, and their family members have come up missing. They don't know where to look for them. They don't know where to find them. And then you have these police extrajudicial executions that have been uh, suppressed during the Biden administration that is coming out now during the Trump administration. And then we have Donald Trump, who is arguing that he is going to give more protections to police officers. And then now we have the Black community. And think about it. So, uh, who does this impact? This impacts Black Americans, and Black Americans right now are fractured within different groups. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying that you can't support a movement. You have freedom of speech, you have freedom of assembly, you are an autonomous human being. You have the right to support whoever you want to support. Again, same thing with me. I'm supporting the Jewish community. I'm standing in solidarity with the Jewish people. I feel more in solidarity and more. I feel like I have a shared history with the Jewish people, and that we have a similar history of persecution. And so that is the reason why I am standing in solidarity with the Jewish community. And so I wouldn't want anyone to say, oh, Kiana, you can't do that, right? And so we all, as human beings, like we all take our own path and we all decide like what we choose to do. But again, what I haven't done is I haven't hijacked the Jewish movement. Because again, this is their movement, and my job is to be there and just in solidarity with them to make sure that, of course, they're not uh, to support them. Like say, I'll give you an example. Here at the university, there was a, um, a student here who is Jewish, and she one day she felt very down, and we did have a class together, but I actually swapped because I wanted to take another class. So we were in a class together, and then I swapped out of that class for business and human rights. But one day, like I saw her in the graduate school, and we were talking, and she seemed a bit down. And she was a bit down because there was, I think, some topics that were coming up. And she's not taking law. I think she's in a different program. But for some reason, like I think she had chosen that course, which was a law course. But one day she came to me, or excuse me, we saw each other in the graduate school, and we were talking. She asked me if I swapped out of that class, and I was like, yeah, I did swap out of the class. And we're just kind of talking about like that class and just whatnot. And she shared with me that like she had felt that some of the content in one of her classes, so it wasn't the class that we had together, but it was like in a different class, that she had felt like it was like it bordered on like anti-Semitic, or like the content was like I don't know. She didn't really go into detail, but she seemed very disturbed by the content. And she brought up her Jewish faith and saying that perhaps maybe this was it- okay. So basically, I'm trying to choose my words to not actually put words in her mouth, but to say it in a way so that like I'm not giving too much away. But essentially, she felt as if like there was a lot of focus on, Jewish situations and issues in that particular class. And so it had her quite, I don't know, she felt uncomfortable about it. And so we were talking about it, and then she just felt open to tell me. I don't know why I don't know why she, felt open to talk to me about it, but some reason she did. Or maybe she could sense that I was a person that she could talk to. I don't know. But she did share it with me, and then we began to talk about it, and I shared with her, I was like, You know, you don't have anything to worry about. Like, you know, if you have you know, if you feel alone, you can talk to me. Like, I'll talk to you." And not that she was alone. I mean, I always see her, and she's talking to a lot of people here, and so she's not alone. But um, I I felt that she felt distressed about this issue, right? But I'm bringing that up, ladies and gentlemen, to say that it wasn't my job to, you know, go to her class, or to even if I had that class, to be to replace her voice, unless that is what she wanted me to do, is to speak up on her behalf, right? And so oftentimes, ladies and gentlemen, like, in these classes that I have, we are talking about Palestine and Israel a lot. And one thing that I'm not doing is I'm not replacing the voices uh, of the Jewish community with my voice, because I don't know if that is an appropriate thing to do. And so all I can do is be a person who is being able to, all I can do is observe the content and what is being said, and to ask myself, is this an appropriate conversation? Kiana, is this something that um, you should speak out about? Is it something that you should speak out about now? If not, why? Right? And so I ask myself those questions. And if I don't speak out about it, it's because there is a reason. And so I'm saying that to say that what I've noticed is that Black Americans, and not all, because there are a lot of Black Americans that are still um, trying to move forward with the rights and solidifying the rights of Black Americans. But what I've noticed is that Black Americans are so attached to these other movements, such as the movement for Palestine, that they forgot all. They've lost focus on protecting Black Americans. Like, we're still the most. To reiterate, we're still the most marginalized group in the United States of America, and there are human rights violations that are happening every single day to Black Americans within the United States. And so is is that what we're doing? Like, are we saying, okay, we're not fighting our battles anymore. We're only fighting the battles of other people. Now, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, like, if you to reiterate, if you follow my activism, you go on my Substack, you see that I often speak out, even when it's not Black Americans, even when it's other communities being abused, even if their human rights violations are being, um, excuse me, even if their human rights are being violated, you can see that I have spoken out about that. But what I have not done is I haven't said, okay, well, my community can fend for itself. My community is okay. And I need to try and help this other community with their rights, and to secure to secure their rights. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I bring this up is because we need to start asking ourselves the question: if we were in another so for example, if if we were if our rights were being violated in that nation, would that nation come to our defense? And that is the way that you have to look at it. If the answer is no, then there should be no reason as to why you are giving, uh, while your activism is pathologically altruistic. So think about it like, okay, let's say for instance, I feel connected to a specific movement, right? And a specific cause, but it's people that are being um, people that are being violated because of that, right? So there is some human rights violations that has taken place. One thing that we should ask ourselves is, and it has to do with, are we wasting our energy? Are we wasting our energy is the question. And so w- the way that I am deciding my politics, and again, you can decide your politics the way that you want to decide it because no specific way is the correct way. But the the methodology that I'm using is, I'm thinking about, Kiana, put yourself as a tourist or a person in that country. Set yourself down in that country. So take yourself out of the United States or out of Belfast and implant yourself into this foreign country that I want to advocate for. Now, would this foreign country, and I mean the country, whichever country I'm situated in, would that country and its citizens advocate for my rights? And if the answer to that question is no, then you have to ask yourself, are you wasting a lot of energy? Now, ladies and gentlemen, Black Americans in the United States have come out in masse in support of the Palestinian movement. And that's, you're right to do that. But I hope that what we see, because Black Americans are doing that, is that when it's time for us advocating for reparations, is because this is really what Black Americans were, and now we're going to get into onto that. What I hope is that they support the Black Americans the way that the Palestinians support the Black Americans the way that the Black Americans have supported the Palestinians. And the way to do that is to look at, for these last years that Black Americans in the United States have, there's been a number of Black Americans that have gotten arrested, have lost their jobs, have been uh, you know, kicked out of office because of their support for Palestine. And so there is, in my personal opinion, that there should be support given back to the Black American community when it comes to reparations. And ladies and gentlemen, please understand, I am not an advocate. This must be reiterated. I'm not an advocate for war. I am not saying that what is happening in Israel or what is happening in Gaza should be happening. I disagree with this. I am devastated that this is even happening on both sides. I'm devastated that to think that any human being would be impacted by what we're seeing abroad. As I have stated numerous times, like I couldn't imagine, you know, being in Belfast, this is where I am now, and that happening to any of us. Like, I just it wouldn't it would never be something that I would want to happen. So when I'm critically evaluating these movements, I don't want people to come and start uh, harassing me and treating me like, a warmonger, or however you want to treat me, because I am being very critical about the activism. And so, what's important now for Black Americans, that has been important for a very long time, is that we are given reparations for the past harm that has happened to our ancestors. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason why this is so important is because, one, it's important because what it does is it shows that America has atoned for that harmful and hurtful history that has happened. And you may say, Kiana, well, eh, how can reparations be given? Ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of case studies uh, that act as a blueprint that show us how to give reparations to the descendants of slaves. We have the Native Americans who have received some form of reparation. We had the comfort women. We had the Japanese that were in the internment camps that have received some form of reparation. Ladies and gentlemen, and I almost want to say that there was possible reparations. Let me just keep it within North America. And so, as you can see, like, there are a number of case studies that act as a blueprint to show America how to atone for those human rights violations. And so, another reason why it's important for the United States of America to issue reparations to the descendants of slaves is because the United States built the our ancestors built the United States, and we didn't get compensated for that. It was free labor. It was free labor, and if we decided that we didn't want, if our ancestors decided that they did not want to participate in that labor, that they uh, either were punished physically or they lost their life. And what I see happening in the United States right now is not in any way atoning for that harmful history. Trump's erecting statues, that does not atone for that harmful history. It does not. Reparations are important because what it does is it acknowledges that the United States had that there was something that was wrong, right? Someone was wronged. Someone was wronged, and the United States sees that it is going to repair that wrong. Now let's think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's think about this rationally. Doge went through several departments of the United States government and found millions upon millions and sometimes billions uh, of dollars. Now, whether or not that those numbers are inflated, remains to be seen, right? Some people say that they are, some people say that they're not. But I think that if we in the middle, we can agree that there are millions of dollars that have been found and probably totaling over a billion. And the way that you make amends for that past history and to make America great, if that is what you want to do, is by repairing a harm that was caused, repairing a historical harm that has never been really addressed appropriately. If you want, i- Republicans are arguing that the United States is not a country that is practicing racism. Okay, but if you're not a country that's practicing racism, then show us. Show us by atoning for that historical harm that has happened in the past. Now, there is, remember at the beginning, are we losing sight? Is the question, because there are some people that are arguing that, hey, the argument is, well, we need to study reparations. We don't need to study reparations, Amazing Lucas. Now, Amazing Lucas, I really respect your content. I respect you. I think that you have some legitimate arguments. I think that you're a very intelligent man. And I think that, you have a long, or excuse me, I think that viewing your content, I can see yourself as somebody who could lead the charge on something in the future. Again, I have a lot of respect for you, but what I disagree with is that we need to study reparations more. We don't need to study it anymore. Like, the first time that reparations, I think, was studied was even, I think, even before the 1970s or 60s. There was a study then. And so why do we need to continue to study, 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 study? Study means procrastination. Study means delay. We've studied reparations for a very long time. And so I think that there was a video that, um, I think somebody posted a video, and that video was of, I think, Republicans that stated that they said that they were going to bar, or if there's a movement for reparations, or if there's even money allocated to even think about studying or proposing reparations, that whatever state that is going to lose funding. And ladies and gentlemen, you know what that sounds to me like? That sounds to me like racism. Because let's be honest. Reparation is, it's usually given to somebody when there has been when there has been a harm done, right? Reparation for the harm done. And so reparations, what we know, oftentimes sometimes it's not even compensatory. Sometimes it's through other means. And so right now, Donald Trump has given reparation to the South Africans, the Afrikaners that he has allowed to come to the United States and to claim asylum and to be fast tracked to citizenship. That is a reparation. That is a reparation because it is correcting some perceived harm, right? There is a book And that book is called Asylum as Reparation, I think. Let me see. Ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so I'll share my screen with you right now. Let's see. See, it's asylum as reparation, refuge and responsibility for the harms of displacement. But this book, it talks about more than just displacement. Let's see. I'll go in so you can kind of see so you can see asylum's moral functions, asylum's humanitarian function, asylum's reparative function, the principle of reparation, the case for viewing asylum reparatively, asylum as restitution, compensation, and satisfaction, what this argument is not, etc. And so, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, asylum is a form of reparation. And it's evident that the Trump administration is giving reparations to the Afrikaners. So where are the Black leaders at? Why am I not seeing or hearing about petitions that are being filed in human rights courts? Why aren't Black leaders filing petitions? Why aren't they going to the United Nations? Why aren't they making an argument? Why aren't they taking this to the Supreme Court? If not the Supreme Court, of course, the Supreme Court is conservative. But why aren't they taking this to the human rights, the International Committee for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, the ICERD? Why aren't they taking it there? Why? Why has that not happened? And ladies and gentlemen, I am not, as a Black American, I know very little about apartheid. What I know is on the surface. And so what I understand to be apartheid is where it's a form of segregation. It was like Jim Crow in the United States of America. And so essentially what was happening in South Africa was that Black South Africans and white South Africans were actually segregated. What I understand to be true is that the segregation was that in South Africa, that the white South Africans were living, within these really well-to-do areas where the Black South Africans weren't. And to reiterate, the apartheid era was similar to the Jim Crow period. And so I take issue with the fact that Donald Trump would even make a move like that, not understanding that very harmful history. And I know that some people are like, well, if South Africans, the Afrikaners who Trump is in support of, if they come to the United States, if they come to the United States with, that attitude, they're not going to do that, etc. But that's not what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about human rights violations being not taken seriously. What is deeply disturbing to me. And so, again, like, you could say, well, Kiana, like, your positions are very contradictory because, like, you're supporting Jewish people, but then you're talking about apartheid and you're not in support of that. And yeah, I'm human, and my politics are not going to be um, even down the middle. But what I do know, ladies and gentlemen, is that when Donald Trump said that he was offering international protection and fast tracked citizenship to the Afrikaners, that should have been uh, a green light for all the African communities to open their doors to Black Americans and say, okay, well, we are offering the same thing to Black Americans. We're offering them international protection, fast track citizenship. We're offering them international protection from harm, from racial injustice in the United States of America. And ladies and gentlemen, some people will argue, well, that's what the Trump administration and that's what, MAGA wants. MAGA wants Black Americans out of the country. And it's not their country to push Black Americans out of, right? They can't push us out of our own country. But let's let's really evaluate this argument. Let's evaluate it and let's look at it realistically. We this is a very difficult position for Black Americans. We are indigenous to the land of the United States. We What makes us indigenous to the land of the United States, whether or not we were brought there, whether or not we were there when everyone else arrived, we're still indigenous to the land of the United States because there was nothing in the United States when we arrived. And so once we arrived on the land, whether there were people, Black Americans or Blacks still there, or excuse me, whether there were Blacks already situated on the land or whether Blacks were brought over through the transatlantic slave trade, over the years, there was an ethnogenesis and we became our own ethnic group. I do believe that. I believe that there was an ethnogenesis. I believe that we are indigenous to the land of uh, the United States of America. But what I also believe is that the blood of Africa runs through us. And because the blood of Africa runs through us, there is some sort of attachment to that land as well. And so because there is an attachment um, because there is an attachment to the land, the continent of Africa, as Black Americans, it only makes sense for the African nations to say, hey, okay, well, we're going to offer we're going to offer international protection to Black Americans as well. And ladies and gentlemen, that does not negate the argument that we are native to the United States of America. Because if we are to be honest, like, no one was here on this nation. Like, uh, the white Americans that came to the United States, they came to the United States from the United Kingdom, from Britain. And so they came from the United States from Britain. There were, you know, enslaved Africans that came from through the transatlantic or on the transatlantic slave trade or through it. And so everyone came together. So really, to tell you the truth, ladies and gentlemen, if we are to be honest, like, who is really staking the claim to the land, right? And so the Americans, the white Americans can't push Black Americans out of the United States. But what I guess this is a circular argument, and I really do apologize that it is so. And I guess what I'm really trying to say is that what the international community can do is to say, okay, United States, we understand that there is a historical injustice that Black Americans are experiencing in the land. And so, because of that historical injustice, what we're going to do is we're going to offer them international protection as well. And we are going to fast track their citizenship, their citizenship. But we haven't heard any African communities, or excuse me, African nations say that or do that. And you know what that would have done? That would have actually put them to the taken the administration to task about those policies. Because if Black Americans did decide to leave en masse to the continent of Africa, that would have been a huge, human rights issue, and it would have been all over the news. And so, like, ladies and gentlemen, that's my concern is Black Americans, they don't, even Africa, are you playing your cards right? Like, let's think about it. The moment that this was Elon Musk, it was his doing, right? Because he initially talked about those policies that happened in South Africa. So he basically, Elon Musk was like, oh, well, what about these racist land policies that's happening in Africa? And so the president of South Africa, he didn't need to justify himself to Elon Musk. He didn't need to explain himself. Okay, you know that there's a historical injustice. You know what happened. You know that there was apartheid, and you know that there was reparation. You didn't need to explain yourself to this rich billionaire. But you felt the need to do that because the Trump administration took away funding, some sort of funding from you. And so to really, I can't say whether or not you needed it or not, because of course I don't know like what it went to. But what I would say is that now is a time, and again, I love my country. I do love the United States of America, and there are some foreign policies that I agree with the United States on, and there are other foreign policies that I don't agree. But what I don't like is when the United States, you can lead by an example, and you can show the world that you're not to be toyed with, but you can do that without being a bully. And I don't like it when the United States is a bully, not only to other countries. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I didn't even know that the time was I didn't know that the time was actually, I thought that the library was closing at 2. But anyway, so that's the security guard saying that the library is closed. But well, I thought the library was closing at 2. But let's see. We'll follow this up next time, ladies and gentlemen. And there you have it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember that your likes and shares are very important. This library is closing. I didn't know that, like, we were running over on time. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.